All righty, this is number one of the two on a lovely day, a Saturday in New Jersey. Um, Elise Stefanik. I didn't know who she was, and I saw a thing that she had said the other day, and then I Googled it and found out what she'd actually said. She said, "Throughout my life, the importance of the State of Israel was clear. A shining beacon of freedom and civilization in the Middle East, and intrinsically entwined with the success of America." End quote. So I looked at that and I was fascinated by it because um, um, I don't really deal in beacons. Did I? I'm not sure. Was Marlon Brando a beacon of something? Probably. And then, as I often say, then I grew up. I turned 15. Beacon of freedom and civilization. It's not so much what Israel is or what America is. That's really secondary. It is how a grown-up, a representative, a professional representative of other people, a professional person involved in government, an inspirer or a depressor, depending on who you are, feels the need throughout my life, she says, the importance of. It doesn't really matter of what. It could be, she might have some people were inspired by Mao Zedong or Ho Chi Minh or whoever. Anyway, so I came to David Brooks' thing. He wrote about his disappointment, his horror and remorse, and he's done a lot of this recently. Oh, the America he thought you were, the beacon extinguished by the beast, the Trump. Fantasies are hard to release. To start off with, this wonderful America is rooted in what we accurately called for a long, long time apartheid. From before founding, from 1619, if you like, to choose a year, we have been an apartheid state until 1965, and then continued in intent. The law changed, or some laws changed, but the intent remains the same. People of the Western civilization are by nature apartheiders because they have set themselves as better than extraordinary. David. That's a lot of Kool-Aid he has been drinking and making and serving the thirsty American, the New York Times, for 30-odd years that allows him to ignore that his Camelot, is now funding a genocide. How does that fit the fallacy? I guess the good fight his country is crusading against Russia and Islam, that 1,000-year war, just isn't going to plan, and Trump is the rumpled non-Teutonic we all love to blame, ignoring the previous ditherer-in-chief we call Democrat, reinforced both crusades, muttering the cliches we call policy. There had been a break, it's true, a Pax Americana, which, like the Romana one, was really just a recess while the abused licked wounds, enriched uranium, and we continued our apartheids and abuse, and we dehumanized them to stay pretty in our mirror. Brooks is the canary in the coal mine. He's the best. When we ignore him and his employer, we will have taken the first steps to the freedom that adulthood provides. I think I know what he means. I think he thinks that he is discovering that people are sinful sometimes and that the model that he is has triumphed over the impulses that lead to the election of Trump's. His diagnosis and prescription might be faith. I'm not sure. I haven't studied him. There seems to be a lot of faithful in the Trump ranks. Or the family story, good parenting by two parents. And his premise must be, I hear this often from many places, that this country, this society is a very good one, probably the best one ever, that makes a successful life easier than, say, Nicaragua or the Congo. So all we need to do is behave and respect each other. But for some reason he will not engage with, we don't. Far from it. I really like the guy myself. He has humor and melancholy, vital in balance and speaks very good prose. And I feel sorry that he is so disappointed, and however that his assessment is accurate for believers in faith. The non-mention of paying for genocide just sticks in my craw. Why is it that that is such a second thought? And it is everywhere. Not for me. It is the proverbial deal breaker. What is the makeup of that human being that goes that way? And they seem to be at the absolute majority. Many, many of my acquaintances go that way. There are a lot of Stefanic's in the Democratic Party. A friend asked me the other day if I ever felt violent. I said it's very rare. Then somebody cut me off in traffic on the way home. I felt that old anger, that teenage anger. But no, it was not violent. I didn't think of hitting the guy. Finally, I said I remember feeling afraid as a teenager in the way that something was very, very wrong and that violence would put it right. And then I grew up. Fisticuffs. I think guns inflict violence, but they are some massive short circuit because shooting is not a physically violent act. Either way, you just shoot and you're hit. And the fear I felt as a middle teenager felt oppressive. Then it went away. It just poof, in my early 20s. Why? And even in an inordinately lucky life, I have had some rough patches, but I never connected these difficulties to the ill intent of anybody else. Lucky me, white man. Acknowledge it. Hence, no desire or need. Weren't no Viet Cong raped my mother, said Muhammad Ali, in the greatest peace speech ever coined. It should be in the Trojan Women. Like Brooks, I am stunned by the last 5 years, but probably for different reasons, or I'd explain the inexplicable differently. He creates his work out of a personal moral code he assumes was more shared, more grassroots. And his egalitarianism, I have admired this egalitarianism. I am lucky to have realized way back in middle life that for some reason my moral code, such as it is, or instinct, is not shared at all. At all. Maybe this is why the genocide particularly strikes me, because I thought even the inept and duplicitous leaders of the West would have said, oh no, that is not on. I wasn't around in the late 30s and through World War II, but perhaps one would have seen the same things at work. Perhaps a continent that had grown accustomed to pogroms didn't recognize the next step, since the same continent seemed fine with apartheid, which contains all the attitudes of genocide. All that's needed is the spark, and one community, culturally convinced they are the righteous, will slip easily into genociding. After, of course, practicing in Africa from a few centuries. This all happened, though, quite quickly, starkly. Never again was never, never, and hadn't been never since the day after. Maybe someday these pals, these representatives will look back and think, was that us? I doubt it. I think their inaction has been constant, that so many atrocities have been de rigueur for so long, that so much Brooks Kool-Aid has been applied to our extraordinary culture of righteousness, that these men and women, these Starmers and Macrons, these Badenochs, get on microphones, look at us and say, I'm being reasonable, I'm representing you and your interests here. And that my interests are so threatened by Islam or resistance to oppression that genocide is third on the slate. Maybe this is why we were so inept and duplicitous. They were so inept and duplicitous because we were. I have to say, I felt I could have had a conversation with Boris Johnson, maybe a running joke, I don't know, or Jeremy Corbyn. Who else could I imagine that with? Tony Benn, I think. Barack would have been fun. Yeah. But Keir? Or Badenoch? Or Lammy? Sorry, no.